It all started at a party I didn't even want to attend. My friends had been pestering me for weeks, insisting I needed a break from the endless grind of college assignments and part-time work. I was in my second year of an engineering degree, surviving mostly on caffeine and late-night YouTube tutorials. Socializing wasn't high on my list. But that Friday, something in me gave in. The house was buzzing with music, and people spilled out onto the front lawn, laughing and talking like they had no worries. I grabbed a cheap beer from a cooler, already contemplating leaving when she walked in. Her name was Lena. I remember seeing her before she saw me. Long dark hair that shimmered in the string lights, a confident smile that seemed like she already owned the room. Her laughter cut through the music, light and mesmerizing. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I still don't know how I mustered the courage to approach her, but we hit it off instantly. She was studying marketing at a nearby university, sharp-witted and impossibly charming. We talked for hours, isolating ourselves from the party like we existed in a bubble. By the time the night ended, she'd written her number on my hand with a marker, and I walked home feeling like I was levitating. We started dating, and for the first few months it was everything I'd ever wanted. Lena made me feel alive in ways I didn't think were possible. She had this way of making the mundane magical. Late-night drives felt like adventures, and even grocery runs were something to look forward to. She said she saw potential in me, that she believed I could do so much more than just school. But slowly that magic unraveled. It started with small criticisms, things I thought were harmless. "You're still wearing that old jacket? Are you really eating that for dinner again?" It was subtle, wrapped in playful teasing. I wanted to be better for her. So, I started changing, dressing the way she liked, picking up extra shifts at work to afford fancier dates. Then came the bigger asks. She said she couldn't stand the apartment I was renting because it was depressing. She found a nicer place. A modern studio downtown with sleek furniture and a rent I could barely comprehend. But Lena said she couldn't live in a dump and needed a place that reflected her standards. I dropped out of school to work full-time. I figured I could always finish my degree later. "We're building a future together," I told myself. We moved into that apartment, and for a while things seemed okay again. We got married a year later. It was a small ceremony, mostly her friends, her family. I was just happy to be by her side, even though part of me already felt hollow. I told myself relationships were about sacrifice, about supporting your partner. But marriage didn't change anything. It only made things worse. The demands kept coming: new clothes, expensive vacations, a car we couldn't afford. I was working 2 jobs by then, coming home exhausted, only to be met with complaints that I wasn't present enough. She'd spend weekends out with friends while I was stuck at work, breaking my back just to keep up with the lifestyle she demanded. I remember the night everything shattered. It was a Tuesday, my day off. I came home early, excited to surprise her with takeout from her favorite Thai place. I walked into our apartment and instantly felt something was off. Her shoes weren't by the door. I found her in our bedroom with another man. There was this horrible stillness as they scrambled to cover themselves. I stood frozen, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear nothing else. She didn't even seem sorry. Her eyes were cold, distant, like I was nothing more than a stranger interrupting her night. "I'm not happy," she said flatly, as if that justified everything. "You're never around. You're always working." I needed more. I walked out without saying a word, leaving everything behind. I slept in my car that night, numb and broken. Years of sacrifice, love, and hope, all gone in an instant. It's been 2 years since that night. I rebuilt my life, though it took time. I went back to school, finished my degree, and got a stable job. I'm living in a small apartment that's mine, truly mine. Sometimes, I still think about Lena. Not with anger, but with a deep, lingering sadness. She was the love of my life, or at least I thought she was. I gave her everything I had until there was nothing left of me. Maybe that's the lesson I needed to learn. That love isn't about losing yourself for someone else, no matter how much you think they're your forever. I still believe in love, just not the kind that costs your soul. That I spent a long time trying to understand what went wrong. where I failed, what I could have done differently. It's what you do when someone rips your heart out. You replay every moment, searching for the crack in the foundation you were too blind or too hopeful to notice. For months after the divorce, I was stuck in that endless loop. Memories of Lena haunted me. The way her eyes sparkled when she laughed, the warmth of her hand in mine during our late-night walks, the way she rested her head on my chest when she was falling asleep. It's cruel how your mind clings to the good moments, even when you know they were built on a lie. I went through the motions like a hollow shell, working, eating, sleeping. Friends tried to pull me out of the abyss, inviting me out, checking in, but I couldn't face the world. I was embarrassed. I felt like a failure. I had given up my education, my dreams, my future, all for someone who never saw me as enough. The turning point came one bitterly cold night in December. I was sitting alone in my car, parked outside the rundown diner where I used to work my first job. Snow was falling softly, covering the cracked asphalt like a fresh start. I stared at the now hiring sign taped crookedly to the window and thought about how far I'd fallen. I hated what I'd become, this broken, defeated version of myself. Lena had already moved on. She was living her life while I was stuck in the wreckage she left behind. I realized that night that no one was coming to save me. I had to save myself. I enrolled back in school the following spring. It wasn't easy. Being older than most of the students, juggling late shifts at a local tech shop, scraping together tuition payments. But for the first time in years, I was doing something for me. The first few months were brutal. I was out of practice, rusty, and constantly fighting the voice in my head that told me I wasn't good enough. But something kept me going, the idea that maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild what I lost. Not for Lena, not for anyone else, just for me. Slowly, life started to piece itself back together. I made friends in my classes, people who didn't know my past, who saw me as just another student chasing a dream. My professors were supportive, and I found myself excelling in ways I never thought possible. Graduation day came faster than I ever expected. As I walked across that stage, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: pride. I did this. I made it. I won't lie and say life magically fixed itself after that. Healing isn't linear. There are still nights when memories of Lena sneak up on me, uninvited and sharp. Sometimes I wonder where she is, if she ever thinks about me, if she regrets what she did. But I don't let those thoughts linger for long. I landed a good job in my field shortly after graduation. It's not glamorous, but it's stable, and I finally feel like I'm building a life that's mine. I moved into a small but cozy apartment, nothing like the flashy place Lena insisted on, but it's home in a way that place never was. The other day, I found an old photo of us while cleaning out a forgotten box. It was from that first party, the night we met. She was leaning against me, laughing, looking at me like I was her whole world. For a moment, I felt a pang of longing, not for her, but for the version of me who believed in that kind of love so fiercely. I set the photo down and walked away. I didn't throw it out. There's no point in pretending the past didn't happen. But I'm not trapped in it anymore. If you're still reading this, maybe you've been where I was: broken, lost, convinced that love can only exist through sacrifice. But I'm here to tell you that you can survive it. You can rebuild even when it feels impossible. Love didn't destroy me. She did. And even though she shattered me into 1,000 pieces, I found a way to put myself back together. And now, for the first time in my life, I feel whole. It's strange how life can twist and turn in ways you never expect. After I rebuilt my life, I didn't think much about love anymore. I was done chasing it, done sacrificing myself just to be enough for someone else. My focus was on my career, finding stability, and finally being content on my own. But life, as it often does, had other plans. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop downtown, typing away on my laptop while nursing a lukewarm latte. I'd made a habit of working there a few times a week. There was something comforting about the hum of conversations and the hiss of the espresso machine. It made the world feel less lonely. That's when she walked in. Her name was Elise. I noticed her because she was struggling with a pile of books and a giant tote bag slung over her shoulder. She ordered her drink, then tried balancing everything while digging through her bag for her wallet, looking adorably frustrated. Without thinking, I stood up and offered to help. She laughed, a light, musical sound that made something inside me stir. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. "Thanks," she said, brushing her hair back. I clearly overestimated my ability to carry half a library. We talked for a few minutes while waiting for her drink. She was a writer, working on her second novel and doing freelance editing on the side. There was something about her. A quiet warmth, a sincerity I hadn't encountered in a long time. I thought that would be the end of it, just a fleeting moment of kindness. But fate wasn't done with us yet. We kept running into each other at the coffee shop, exchanging smiles and small talk until one day she slid into the seat across from me without asking. "Mind if I crash your workspace? My usual spot is taken." I didn't mind at all. We spent the afternoon working side by side, sharing quiet conversations during breaks. Felt easy. No pressure, no pretense. Just two people finding comfort in each other's presence. Weeks passed, and our coffee shop encounters turned into intentional plans. Dinners, walks through the park, long drives where we talked about everything. Our dreams, our pasts, our fears. I told her about Lena eventually, expecting her to flinch or judge me. But she just listened, her eyes filled with understanding, not pity. "I'm glad you survived it," she said softly. "But you're more than what happened to you." Being with Elise felt different. She never demanded perfection or tried to reshape me into something I wasn't. She celebrated my successes and held space for my struggles. With her, love wasn't a transaction. It was a quiet, steady presence, built on mutual respect and understanding. One rainy evening, after cooking a disastrous attempt at homemade pasta, I found myself watching her laugh as she tried to clean flour off her face. That's when it hit me I was in love. Not the desperate, all-consuming kind I thought love was supposed to be, but something far better. We've been together for 3 years now. We live in a small, cozy apartment filled with books, plants, and mismatched furniture. It's not perfect, but neither are we, and that's the beauty of it. Every now and then, I think about the path that brought me here, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the nights spent questioning my worth. But I wouldn't change any of it because it led me to Elise. Life has a way of breaking you, but sometimes, if you're lucky, it also gives you a chance to heal. I never thought I'd find love again. But I did. And this time, it feels like coming home. I didn't expect life to ever feel this good again. After everything, I thought I was destined to be one of those people who carried their scars like weights, dragging them around forever. But with Elise, my past feels like a distant memory. Not erased, but softened, reshaped into something that no longer defines me. We got married last summer, in the quiet meadow behind her parents' old cabin. It was simple, intimate, just close friends and family. No extravagant venues, no showy performances, just us. As we exchanged vows under the soft glow of the setting sun, I realized how different this moment felt from my first wedding. With Lena, there had been an underlying pressure to perform, to become someone worthy of her love. But with Elise, there was only acceptance. She loved me, all of me, without conditions or expectations. Standing there, looking into her tear-filled eyes, I finally understood what love was supposed to be. Safe, honest, and freeing. Life after love. We settled into married life effortlessly. It wasn't a grand, cinematic romance filled with constant highs, but something deeper, steady and comforting, like a river that knows its path. We still had our struggles, our disagreements over silly things like whose turn it was to take out the trash, or whether we really needed more throw pillows. We didn't, but we got them anyway. One particularly stormy night, as rain lashed against the windows and thunder rumbled in the distance, I found myself wide awake, haunted by an old nightmare. In it, I was back in that hollow apartment with Lena, working endless shifts, chasing an impossible version of love. I woke up gasping for air, my heart pounding. Elise stirred beside me, her brow furrowing as she reached out, still half asleep. "You okay?" she murmured, her fingers brushing against mine. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at her. This beautiful, kind soul who had walked into my life when I'd sworn off love entirely. She didn't know the depth of what she'd done for me, how she'd mended parts of me I didn't even realize were still broken. "I'm okay," I whispered, squeezing her hand. "I've got everything I need right here." A new chapter. Life kept moving forward. Elisa's second novel became a bestseller, and she was busier than ever with book tours and interviews. I was thriving in my career too, finally feeling like I'd built something solid, something no one could take from me. Then, one chilly autumn afternoon, she handed me a small, gift-wrapped box with a sly smile. "Open it," she urged, practically bouncing with excitement. Inside was a tiny onesie that read, "Future bookworm coming soon." I blinked, my breath catching in my throat. "Are you serious?" Tears sparkled in her eyes as she nodded. "We're having a baby." I pulled her into my arms, holding her so tightly I could feel her heartbeat against mine. In that moment, every broken piece of my past faded into the background. This was my future, a future I never thought I'd have. Full circle. Sometimes, when I'm rocking our daughter to sleep in the quiet stillness of the night, I find myself reflecting on how far I've come. Life didn't just break me, it remade me. The boy who once gave up everything for a hollow version of love is gone. In his place stands a man who learned how to fight for himself, and found something truly worth fighting for along the way. I don't hate Lena anymore. If anything, I'm grateful. She taught me what love isn't, and that knowledge led me here, to a life that's imperfect, messy, and absolutely beautiful. If you're reading this and feeling like you'll never recover from your own heartbreak, please believe me when I say that you can. You will. You're stronger than you think, and life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. I thought my story ended the night Lena betrayed me, but it was just the beginning. And now, I'm finally home. Life had fallen into a beautiful rhythm. Our daughter, Mia, was almost 2, with Elisa's sharp mind and my stubborn determination. We lived in a small house on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by trees that turned brilliant shades of gold and crimson in the fall. Everything felt right. Then, one chilly evening in November, something happened that shattered the peaceful life I had worked so hard to build. I was coming home late from work, exhausted but excited to see Elise and Mia. I'd picked up a bouquet of wildflowers from the little shop Elise loved. A random gesture, just because. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar black SUV parked across the street. I thought nothing of it until I saw the figure standing on our porch. It was Lena. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Memories came rushing back like a tidal wave. Her betrayal, the years of sacrifice, the hollow emptiness she left behind. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as I stared at her, frozen in disbelief. She looked different, older. Her once meticulously styled hair now hung loose around her shoulders, and she was dressed in worn jeans and a coat that seemed too thin for the biting cold. Against every instinct screaming at me to turn around and leave, I forced myself to step out of the car. This was my home now, my life. She didn't belong here. The confrontation. Lena's eyes widened when she saw me. For a moment, we just stood there in stunned silence, old ghosts swirling between us. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice cold, steady. She hesitated, her expression a mess of regret and desperation. I'm sorry for showing up like this," she stammered. "I didn't know where else to go." Before I could respond, the front door opened, and Elise stepped outside, holding Mia on her hip. Her warm smile faded the instant she saw Lena. Protective instinct kicked in, and she gently set Mia down inside before stepping between us. "Who is this?" Elise asked, her voice calm but edged with steel. Lena looked down, almost ashamed. "I'm an old friend." I could have corrected her. I could have told Elise everything right there, laid out the entire twisted history. But something in Lena's eyes stopped me. She looked broken, in a way I'd never seen before. I needed to see you," Lena whispered. "I needed to apologize." The truth revealed. We stood there, the cold wind cutting through the heavy silence. I was ready to tell her to leave, to slam the door on that chapter of my life once and for all, until she said the words that stopped me in my tracks. "I'm dying." The air seemed to vanish from my lungs. Elise's face went pale as she instinctively reached for my hand. "I have stage 4 cancer," Lena continued, her voice trembling. "They caught it too late. There's nothing they can do." I felt like the world had tilted sideways. After everything she'd done, after all the pain she caused. "This? I didn't come here to ask for anything," she added quickly, as though reading my thoughts. I needed you to know I was sorry. For all of it. I've spent years hating myself for what I did to you." Her voice cracked, and for the first time in forever, I saw the real Lena. The person behind the mask, stripped of pretense, standing in front of me with nothing left to hide. The final choice. I could have turned her away. Part of me wanted to finally win, to watch her walk back into the darkness she'd left me in years ago. But as I looked at her, thin and frail, I realized that forgiveness wasn't about her. It was about me. "We'll talk inside," I said quietly. Elise shot me a questioning look, but she trusted me enough not to protest. We invited Lena into the warmth of our home, where the crackling fireplace softened the edges of the tense silence. Mia peeked out from the living room, giggling at the sight of a new visitor. For the next few hours, Lena told us everything. About her life after she left me. About how she spiraled, burned bridges, and eventually found herself alone. She confessed that she'd been too ashamed to reach out when she first got sick. "I didn't think you'd want to see me," she admitted. She was right, I hadn't wanted to. But seeing her like this, stripped of everything, I realized I couldn't carry that hatred anymore. Before she left that night, I told her the words I never thought I'd say. "I forgive you." The real ending. Lena passed away 3 months later. I visited her in hospice a few times, though Elise never pressured me to explain why. She understood that some wounds needed closure, even if they couldn't be fully healed. In the end, Lena's reappearance wasn't about reopening old wounds. It was about letting go of the past for good. I'd spent so long believing that my life would always be defined by her betrayal. But in forgiving her, I realized that I held the power to rewrite my story. Love didn't save me. I saved me. Elise and I still talk about that strange, unexpected chapter sometimes, usually while sitting by the fire after Mia's asleep. Life is unpredictable, messy, beautiful, and sometimes heartbreakingly complicated. But now, when I think back to that party where it all began, I don't feel anger or regret. I just feel free. Life continued, though it felt different after Lena's passing. There was a quiet finality to it, like closing a book you thought would never end. I didn't talk much about my visits to her hospice room, and Elise never pushed me to explain. She understood me in a way no one ever had. That forgiveness isn't about condoning the past. It's about reclaiming your future. I kept a single photograph of Lena, the one from that first party where we met. Not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder of how far I'd come. Of the person I used to be, the person I almost lost, and the person I fought to become. 1 year later, it was a quiet autumn afternoon. The kind of day where the crisp air smells like fallen leaves and possibility. Elise and I were in the backyard, watching Mia chase bubbles with the relentless determination only a toddler could manage. Her laughter echoed through the trees, warm and pure. As I leaned back in my chair, Elise reached over and rested her hand on mine. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I nodded, squeezing her fingers gently. "I think I finally am." We sat there in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when you're truly at peace. I watched Mia twirl in the sunlight, her tiny face lit with joy, and felt something I never thought I'd feel again: gratitude. Gratitude for the heartbreak, for the broken roads that led me here. Gratitude for Lena. Not for the pain she caused, but for the lessons she unknowingly taught me. The final twist. Weeks later, an unexpected letter arrived. It was from Lena's lawyer. Confused, I opened it, and inside was a handwritten note from her. "I never got the chance to truly repay you for what you gave me, for being the person I never deserved. You may not believe it, but you were the best thing that ever happened to me. I know I can't change the past, but maybe I can help you build a better future. I left something for Mia, something for her to know that even someone like me could find redemption in the end. Attached was a deed to a small cabin by the lake, Lena's childhood home. I sat there, stunned, the letter trembling in my hands. Elise watched me with concern, and I handed her the papers, still processing what this meant. Lena had given us her most treasured place, a place she once told me was the only place she ever felt safe. We visited the cabin that weekend. It was old but beautiful, nestled among tall pines with a quiet dock stretching over a peaceful lake. Mia ran barefoot through the grass, giggling as she tossed stones into the water. Elise and I stood together on the dock, letting the stillness settle over us. For the first time in a long time, I let myself cry, not from sadness, but from release. The true ending. We kept the cabin. We visit every summer now, creating new memories in a place rooted in old ones. Lena's gift wasn't about redemption or forgiveness. It was about freedom, about showing me that even the darkest stories can find light at the end. Mia will grow up knowing love, not just because of the life we built, but because of the lessons we learned. She'll know that people are flawed and that sometimes even those who hurt us can change, if not for themselves, then for the people they leave behind. Looking out over the still waters of the lake, with the sunset painting the sky in hues of gold and amber, I realized something profound. My story didn't end in heartbreak. It didn't even end with forgiveness. It ended with hope, and that was more than I ever thought I'd find.